They called her a bastard. They made her sleep behind the house, serve their food, harvest fruit she would never taste. But what no one dared to say out loud was this: she had been born in that house. Córdoba, 1845. Every morning the sun rose golden over the orange groves, spilling warm light across the sprawling stone estate that stood like a silent ruler over the land. The scent of citrus blossoms drifted through the air, sweet and intoxicating, blending with the dry Andalusian earth. To anyone passing by, it looked like paradise. To Guadalupe, it was a prison wrapped in perfume. She was 22 years old, barefoot most days. Her hands were rough from years of harvesting oranges from dawn until dusk. Her dresses were simple, faded, carefully mended at the seams. Yet there was something in the way she carried herself, a quiet dignity that refused to bend completely. From the balcony above, Doña Remedios watched her like a hawk. Dressed in black, always in black, the matriarch ruled the estate with an iron will ever since her husband, Don Rodrigo, had died 15 years earlier. At her side stood her son, Ignacio, handsome, arrogant, and certain that everything his eyes touched belonged to him by divine right. "That bastard works too slowly," Ignacio once muttered, smoke curling from his cigar as he gestured toward Guadalupe below. "Send her to the kitchen." Doña Remedios's eyes narrowed. "She stays where she belongs. A nameless girl born of shame deserves no better." Guadalupe heard every word. She always did. The insults traveled on the warm breeze between the trees and pierced her chest like invisible thorns. She had learned long ago not to respond. Silence was safer. Silence meant survival. She had been told her mother was a nobody, that Don Rodrigo had kept her out of pity, that she should be grateful for scraps, for a roof, for the right to exist. But deep inside her, a small, stubborn voice whispered something different. Something was wrong with that story. Then Juan Alejandro Mendoza arrived. He came from Seville on a blazing August afternoon, riding a black horse with disciplined elegance. 38 years old, broad-shouldered, dark hair touched with silver at the temples. A widower. 3 years earlier, fever had stolen his wife in 5 days, leaving him alone in a mansion too large for silence. Since then, he had buried himself in business, building wealth where his heart once lived. He came to Córdoba for trade, an export partnership proposed by Doña Remedios. He did not expect to find anything else. The first time he saw Guadalupe, she was reaching into the branches of an orange tree, sunlight outlining her figure in gold. She did not see him, but he saw her. There was something about the way she moved, not like a servant, but like someone tending to something sacred. When she lifted a basket too heavy for her frame and nearly stumbled, he moved without thinking, catching her arm. The touch startled them both. "I'm sorry, Señor," she whispered, eyes lowered. "There is nothing to forgive," he answered gently. Her voice lingered in his mind long after she walked away. That night at dinner, she served silently, while the family spoke loudly. And then Doña Remedios said it, casually, cruelly. "The bastard has at least learned to serve properly." Juan felt something tighten in his chest. When Guadalupe briefly lifted her eyes and they met his, the world seemed to still. Her gaze held sadness, yes, but also strength, the kind forged in fire. Something did not add up. Over the following days, Juan began to notice details. There was no mention of a will, no clear documentation of inheritance. Ignacio avoided speaking about his father's death, and Guadalupe. She had been born on the property. One afternoon, under the excuse of business in the city, Juan visited the town registrar.
An elderly clerk named Don Esteban remembered Don Rodrigo well. "A just man," the old clerk said softly, "generous, especially with a little girl he adored." Juan leaned forward. "A girl?" he asked. "They called her the Orange Child. Some said she was his daughter from before his marriage. Others whispered she was kin. I never knew the full truth, but he loved her. That much was certain." Juan's pulse quickened. "What happened to her?" "When Don Rodrigo died, Doña Remedios sent the girl to the back quarters, said she was nothing. There were rumors of a will, but it was never presented." The pieces slid into place like a lock finding its key. Guadalupe. She was not charity. She was a secret, and perhaps an heir. That evening, Juan found her sitting beneath an old orange tree, knees drawn to her chest, watching the sun melt into gold across the horizon. He sat beside her without asking permission. "Do you remember your mother?" he asked gently. She hesitated.
"No, senor. I'm told she died when I was born. But sometimes I dream of a woman with dark hair who sings to me." Her voice trembled. "And Don Rodrigo?" Juan asked carefully. Her eyes softened. "He called me his little orange girl. He brought me sweets from the city. Everything changed when he died." Juan's jaw tightened. "I don't believe what they say about you," he said firmly. She looked at him, startled. "You shouldn't say such things," she whispered. "It will bring trouble." "I do not fear trouble," he replied. "I fear injustice." Hope flickered in her eyes, fragile, dangerous. Weeks passed. Tension thickened inside the estate. Doña Remedios watched Juan more carefully. Ignacio grew restless. Camila, the younger daughter, attempted increasingly desperate displays of charm. But Guadalupe began to change. She stood a little straighter, spoke a little more clearly, allowed herself sometimes to believe that she mattered. Juan continued investigating quietly. He requested access to old storage trunks under the guise of reviewing property history. He searched for documents, letters, any evidence of Don Rodrigo's intentions. He was no longer staying for business. He was staying for truth, and perhaps something more. One evening, beneath the lantern glow in the courtyard, Juan looked at Guadalupe and saw not a servant, but a woman forged by injustice and still unbroken.
He realized something profound. He was not rescuing her. He was recognizing her. And in defending her dignity, he felt his own wounded heart begin to mend. Because sometimes love is not born from grand gestures. Sometimes it is born the moment one soul says to another, "I see you." And sometimes the greatest act of love is not possession, but restoration. Under the orange trees of Córdoba, secrets waited to be exposed. A will yet to be found, a name yet to be reclaimed, and a love that would not bow to lies. The girl they called Nothing was never nothing at all.